Hey everybody, if you want to continue to learn about Donald Trump's mental health, please make sure to follow along and share. I've said as loudly as I can since 2017, he is a malignant, narcissistic sociopath in cognitive decline. His behavior is only going to get worse, and he truly is an extremely dangerous human being. Now, one of the questions I get asked quite a lot is, well, what about his supporters? Can you explain why it is that so many decent people seem to support Donald Trump? So I thought I'd answer that and also explain why you, as a decent person, are not susceptible to Donald Trump. It's called malignant normalcy. Psychologist Robert J. Lifton coined the phrase, and essentially it's a degenerative social phenomenon where mass numbers of people view reality through a skewed lens, in this case Donald Trump, and they adopt his traits. Now you have to remember, Trump is a narcissist and a sociopath, and by and large his supporters are not. However, they are imitative. If you were to speak to an old friend who became a Trumper and stayed away from politics, odds are you'd have a great conversation. You wouldn't get into any argument whatsoever. In other words, everything would be perfectly normal. But if you spoke about music and mentioned someone like Taylor Swift or the person who's doing the halftime show at Super Bowl, whose name I've forgotten, odds are they would get very upset, they would react. Because the mentioning of these names triggers their defiant worldview. Their behavior is imitative of Trump. In other words, they have been emotionalized and fear-mongered. So the big question is, why them and not you? Why were they susceptible and not you? Well, there's many reasons. For some, it's the lure of the crowd, what they saw as a movement or a brotherhood. They wanted to belong for something. But the others are, well, possibly they fell prey to an opinion disguised as information in the echo chambers. In other words, Fox News, talk radio, and so on. And of course, social media algorithms. And at some point, this is real key, they began to get a dopamine rush every time a worldview that was validated about their opinion. They felt very good about it. They got a rush. You've had dopamine, right? You know what it means. You feel energized. So generally, this is about beating the other side, or quote, owning the libs, disguised as winning and doing something noble. But in reality, it's about that dopamine rush because they become addicted to it. Maybe you've seen people on Fox News get animated, people you love watching Fox News. In other words, it means adopting a position that works against their own interests, like cutting aid for people, elderly people, people at the VA, whatever it might be, just to help billionaires, when of course this goes against everything they might normally not agree with. Write about Trump and they feel better. In other words, it helps obfuscate what they're actually saying and how they're feeling. So yes, it's all about that dopamine rush.